Hey, everybody, and welcome to How to Make Films and Influence People with Peter and Andrew, where we talk about our own approach to screenwriting and filmmaking. We discuss the great works of cinema, and we blasphemously imagine how they could be remade. This week, we'll be talking about The Apartment by Billy Wilder and giving an update on our current screenplay project that you, the audience, has been contributing to. But first of all, I'm Peter, successful filmmaker, film professor, and screenwriter. This is Andrew.
Filmmaker, screenwriter, but not a Supreme Court justice by choice.
We wanted to update everybody on our screenplay project, the status of this week's listener poll, our script that we're working on, what we're calling the Reverse Robbery Project for now, which is not the actual title. It's a great title. You know, a lot of films have had worse titles than that, but that is not the actual title of our project. But for this week, we had you, the listeners, vote on a character name. This week, the character of the robber, that we've been sort of just calling the robber. That's sort of the role that he plays. But we wanted to figured it would actually be useful to him for him to have a real person name in the movie. So we asked you, the listeners, to vote, and the top three vote getters were Clint, Quint, and Hector. Clint, Quint, and Hector. It's good. It's a good rule of three. Duck, duck, goose there. And the winner of those three, voted by you, the listener, was Andrew.
It was Clint. Of course, everybody knew it from the beginning. It was always going to be Clint. Just a great name for a robber. I can't think of a better name for a robber than Clint.
I feel like if we had named him Quint, everyone would have been confused and thought it was Clint. So, not the best one.
Although maybe
Hector,
now
good too, but
people might think it is Clint and that it should be Quint. They might misunderstand it. So maybe this is just a huge mess, but I think we just go with it. The audience has spoken. We have to just do what they say on this.
the audience has spoken, and I think everyone in the audience should forget that Quint was ever an option. And just we're going full bore with Clint.
It's Clint, Clint. Clint. Yeah, that's a great name. You can't be confused with anybody else. Maybe Clint Eastwood. That's not who our character is, though. Very much
He's
not a
not.
Clint Eastwood person.
I think
Hmm.
this character, just a word about him, he's kind of he's sort of like the bad guy of the story, but our story doesn't it's not so much about good guys and bad guys. It's kind of everyone is a little bit good, everyone's a little bit bad. It's a lot about changing expectations of who a person is. But I would say he does play the part of, he's not necessarily morally the bad guy, but he definitely is, I suppose, an antagonist figure in the story, and presents a real challenge to our protagonist. So that's, I guess, in that sense, more of an antagonist than a bad person at his core.
Right.
But
This isn't a story about how good robbers are. He just happens to have been a robber and kind of the catalyst to the story here. Gets everything going, but does have a pretty sad backstory, if you think about it. And he really is a well-rounded individual in the end. And I think audiences are going to like this guy. We like him. He's a really fun character.
I think he's a fun character, absolutely. And it's kind of that thing of like the realness of his character, his backstory doesn't take away from the bad things that he does, but it makes it, I think the audience will connect with him as a real person and feel like there's something to sink your teeth into there without it undermining, the challenge that he presents to the story. So that's talking very vaguely. It's maybe annoyingly vague about what's going on in the story, but I think this is a great character that I'm excited for everyone to see as the project unfolds. Let's talk a little bit about what we've been watching before we get into our movie of the week. What have you been watching, Andrew?
We have been catching up on this animated show called Bob's Burgers. Have you ever seen this one?
I
I feel
never
like we're
have.
in
I'm
the
very aware of it, but I have not seen it.
yes. We're in this. I feel like a golden age of adult animated comedy shows. I mean, started obviously by The Simpsons, but there's just so many of them on TV right now, and I've seen some of them. But Bob's Burgers is one that me and my wife like. It's it's not as comedy heavy where it's just joke after joke after joke like The Simpsons, but it's much more like family situations, Relationships, it follows the same pattern every episode, basically, where you have a problem that they have within the family, usually some type of personal problem, gets resolved in a funny way. There's a good message at the end, but it's just kind of a fun, nothing's too serious, it's never too heavy, and it's really just a fun show about these characters that I think it's the 15th season, maybe 16th season, that you just know so well. And at this point, it's almost like a comfort show where you're just like, I just like these characters, just seeing what little hijinks they're going to get up to this week. And done really well. It's been on a long time. So, but we really like this show, and we are catching up now that the new seasons have started.
I've never watched it. It seems like smart people like it, so I should check it out. Um,
Smart people like it.
Smart people, present company excluded, of course, but I have heard of
that's,
smart people enjoying it.
that's how they market it. I mean, they market it to smart people. So, you know.
I've been watching a few things, but I was flying this week and I saw a couple movies on the airplane. But one thing I
Oh, yeah.
watched was The Luckiest Man in America with Paul Walter Hauser, and it's an interesting movie. This is the third movie I've seen in the last year that was uh, entirely over the course of shooting a game show. Like it
Oh, yeah.
basically in the I'm going to say 1980s, must be 1980s because a big part of it is the VHS tapes that they have. But so there was a show called Press Your Luck, and this guy gets on it and somehow breaks all their records for winnings. And the past record was like $24,000, and he's up to over $100,000. And everybody in the show is freaking out. Who is this guy? How did he beat our system? What's going on? But the whole thing is basically just told over the course of shooting this game show, and it's based on a true story. It's it's an it, it's interesting. I'm not sure that it is that great a film. It's such a small story. It's like a quirky. Wow, can you believe that this guy did that and he beat the system? But I would kind of like for it to be more of a jumping off point for a bigger story. But it really just is. Yep, we're watching him as he plays the game show, and all the people who work at the game show.
When they never leave the game show room during the course of
They
the
do
movie.
leave the game show room, but it's the timeline wise, it's all during the shooting of the game show, and they barely leave the game show. So it's not much. I feel like it's a bit of a small story, which I remember watching a film. I forget what it's called, but it was with Greg Kinnear, and it was about the inventor of the not the windshield wiper, not the inventor of the windshield wiper. That would be a little too much. This is about the inventor of the variable speed windshield wiper. And
Oh, more specific, yes.
and and it's a little bit of an underdog story, and somebody who believes in their dream, but it's, man, that's a small story. That is a small story, and I liked it fine, but it's a bit of a small story. There's another movie that takes place over the course of a game show that came out this year with Anna Kendrick, which is about, I think it's called The Woman. Ooh, I should look it up. It's like the Woman of the
Another
Year,
one.
Woman of the Hour,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
Woman of the Hour, and it's about another true life story where a serial killer appeared on a dating show, and it's sort of about the
That
woman
seems like a
who's
fun
then set up on a
premise.
date with him.
Yeah, that sounds like a much more fun premise for a game show. Just as a jumping off point.
I mean, I don't know if that's a fun premise for a game show. Of we're going to set you up on a date. Some of them will be Prince
Well,
Charming.
for a
Some of them
movie
will be
about a
serial
game
killers. That is a
show,
good game show.
that is a good game show. Who wouldn't watch that game show? Is the
I mean,
question.
it's
One of these
literally
people is a serial.
Survivor.
We will find out by the end.
But that
But
was
that's a
that was
great.
a little bit more
So
going
it's
on
not
with that
better
one.
than Slum Dog Millionaire. I feel like is the epitome of what a game show would be and how you do a game show, where it's like You go back in time. This is how he knows the question. Then he answers the question. You got the two storylines going. That was really fun. I liked that a lot. But with this one, you're saying it's not so much a second storyline. It's just kind of just the one going on.
Luckiest Man in America, it's really just one storyline. And they're like side characters, but you don't really learn that much about them. You don't really care that much about them. It's just not that much going on. Woman of the Hour uh, has a lot more to it. I don't think it's an amazing film, but it has a lot more to it because you're following both the woman who has her own story going on and is in peril because there's this serial killer that she's being set up on a date with, but then you're also flashing away to that serial killer's past so that you, the audience, are finding out about these different horrible
Right.
things that he's done. And so it's a little bit, the stakes are higher, the story's a little bit bigger. There's another one, Late Night with the Devil. So not a game show, it's actually a late
Yeah.
night show. But that was another one where I didn't love it, but I did think that that one was really playing on the late night show. So the contained, we're making this movie during the filming of one show. Uh, I like that as a sort of a mechanism for a very contained story with crazy things. And I like the mix of what sort of some of these horror tropes. Is the devil here? What has happened in the past? But what's the have you sold your soul to the devil and things like that? So it's got a lot of these horror movie tropes going on, but mixed with a lot of the conventions that you expect from a late night show. Here's this guest, and they're kind of funny but a little creepy, and here's the band, and they're doing this, and so they're. I thought that again,
Is the
I'm not
premise
sure that I'm won over by this whole format, but that one I thought was very interesting in that I thought it played to the contained nature of the show the best.
is that premise like the devil is the late night talk show host? Is that the idea behind it?
I don't want to spoil it, and I don't remember it 100%,
That
but
would
I
be
think it's more
spoiler.
that
Yeah.
he sold his soul to the devil at some point in the past, and now the devil's coming to collect. I think it's a little bit more like that.
Oh, that's fun. And the devil's like, you
That's
know
always
what? The
good.
best time to collect on your soul would be live during your live TV show. I'm not going to wait until you're done. So yeah, that brings a lot of drama to something. My soul could be taken at any moment. I like that. It's a great talk show.
If not now, then when? So,
Yeah, there's never a good time for the devil to show up and be like, "I need your soul," you know. But there's never a good
but
time. It's sick.
this way at least America gets to enjoy it too. We get to watch.
Right. Yeah, it's for the enjoyment of everybody, and it probably adds to his whole aura as the devil, being like, "Hey, just want to remind everybody, you saw it here live. I do take
If the
souls."
devil only steals your soul quietly without anybody knowing about it, then he's not really doing his job well.
I mean, you get the rumors going. I heard, and that's scary. But every now and then, you need a big live event to just remind people. This is who I am.
I think that's true. I'm not sure if that's strictly biblical, but I think that's true.
I mean, it makes sense. If I were the devil, that's how I would do it. And that could be it. That's a great name for a show. If I were the devil, this is what I would do. They've
That's
done the
good.
if I was God, this is what I would do. They've done that movie. Have they done the
Right.
movie if I was the devil, this is what I would do? They might have done that. In fact, that exists. We could write that one next.
That's right. Let's work on that one. Um, just while we're on this, any other game show, late night show? Well, there's shows about actual late night, but
You know what I
I
was
don't know.
thinking when he said game show? I always go to it's only a part of the movie, Magnolia. Isn't there a
Oh
game
yeah,
show in that movie?
that's a
And
big
it's
part
like
of
a
it. The
big
kid,
deal.
it was like a kid winner,
Yeah. Because
and
that
now he's
movie
an
does like the
adult.
three storylines, but it's like 3 hours long. And so you feel like you spent a lot of time in this game show. But I can't remember what it was about. The kid's in it, and he like, is it like pees his pants or something? There's something around that.
I think
It's been a while
I
since I've
forget
seen that movie.
exactly what it was, but that I think worked well because it was many different stories going on, and I believe it was the kid was successful on a game show, and now it's him years later. I think William H Macy plays the kid
Yeah,
years later.
that's a going back in time thing to talk about the present day storyline. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was very interesting. They did the game
The
show very
other big
well.
one I think of is White Men Can't Jump.
Oh yeah,
That's another where Jeopardy plays a big role in that one.
right. You know what? I feel like game shows can, if you use it in your movie, it's a very good way to get information going, set the stakes a little higher.
Well, I do think that an underspoken about idea for screenwriting and filmmaking is like everybody thinks that you have to reinvent the wheel or okay, I'm going to read Save the Cat or I'm going to think about the three-act structure for my story, but basically I'm starting at square one with what the story should be. But if you can use built-in stakes, built-in like time frame, built-in ticking clock that are just inherent to the setup of the movie, I think that's a great way to do things. So if there's a game show, that's that we know what to expect. If there's a wedding, we know we know what events are going to happen at the wedding.
Right.
And for you, the writer, you then can think about what do I want my story to be that's going to play into these big events. But you don't have to start from a blank page. You can have a sense of what should happen in a wedding, and then you can think about what kind of events that go along with my story would fit into this general wedding framework. But you already have this thing that people are familiar with, and that people understand there are high stakes going along with that. Um, and so I think like
That's
looking for those kind of opportunities, those kind of setups is a underappreciated sort of movie screenplay technique, which when you actually see how many movies get made that have that kind of built-in mechanism, it's not underappreciated. People in the know realize that this works, but I think a
there's
lot
a
of times
reason you
when
see it.
people are writing on their own, they don't look they I don't know if people think it's cheating or if they just don't it doesn't occur to them, but I think looking for that looking for ways to make it easier for yourself as a writer, I think is a smart move.
Exactly. By setting up a situation people are familiar with and they know where it's going. If you have expectations about how something's supposed to go, you can then have fun diverting those expectations, changing things. How you change it then is like, oh, I know this is different than how it should be. And you can get it's like a quick way into a story or a situation where you don't have to do a ton of explaining. Because if you had to set up what a wedding was before your movie started, then it'd be like, you're like, well, why even do it? You can skip all of this, like the pretext and like the explanations just to get into the story quicker by using a scene people are familiar with. That's a
Exactly.
good idea.
Exactly. Another, yeah, I think wedding game show's an interesting one.
Game shows, funerals,
Funerals.
any type of birthday party. They do that a lot. What are the other
Yep.
ones?
I
Going
mean,
on a
there are
date.
other things like last day of school or like prom night, which are
Right.
not exactly, well, I guess with prom night, it's like, okay, there's going to be school, then there's going to be getting ready for the prom, then there's going to be prom, then there's going to be after prom. And it's high stakes. Like, so, I mean, there are some built in things there, but I think those are that kind of thing to, um, I mean, and it's going to be different if you're telling a story that's taking place over the course of years, but if you're telling a story that's going to take place over a day or a few days, looking for those opportunities, I think, is a smart
It's
move.
good to have an event. Yeah, to kind of anchor the story. It's reminding me of what was it? Palm Springs with Andy
Oh yeah,
Samberg.
with Andy Samberg, the sort of
Yeah, where they do it all
Groundhog
based
Day
around the
etch.
wedding because it's going to be the same day over and over again. So like we need something exciting to go on this day to give this day some type of structure. Or like in Groundhog's Day where it's like today has structure to it. It's not just a random day, and to just give it more to work with when you're jumping in, and you have a reason for all these people to be here. If you have an event, you then have a reason for whatever you want to happen. Whatever you want, however you want it to go.
Yep. I think that's a fun thing as a viewer, and it's smart as a writer to look for those opportunities. And we'll be right back after this.
Elmer's glue has been the most trusted brand in glue since 1951. The world has changed a lot since then, but Elmer's glue still bonds surfaces together. And it's not made from dead horses. Elmer's glue comes in all kinds of colors, even sparkle. Elmer's glue is the perfect solution for gluing macaroni to paper, making slime, pouring a small amount into the palm of your hand to let it dry out so you can peel a thin layer off your skin and play with it. And it's not made from dead horses. Elmer's glue is the glue for people who need glue. When you need glue, think Elmer's.
And we are back. Let's talk about The Apartment, and let's get into that.
The Apartment, 1960, directed by Billy Wilder, written by Billy Wilder as well. Here's the logline. Bud Baxter is a minor clerk in a huge New York insurance company until he discovers a quick way to climb the corporate ladder. He lends out his apartment to the executives as a place to take their mistresses. Although he often has to deal with the aftermath of their visits, one night he's left with a major problem to solve. I think that's a pretty good logline without giving away what the story is, which we will do. But that really sets it up pretty well there.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the film. I think it's got a good solid premise that you get right away, and it's kind of, it's going to be about characters and relationships. It's going to be a little bit about the workplace, a little bit about love, a little bit about some bigger themes, I think too, that we could talk about. But it really is a pretty, you're very quickly into the hook of the movie, which is this guy has an apartment that is very nicely situated in New York City, and so everybody in his office, all the higher ups, want to use that apartment for their liaisons with ladies, and which is that's what all the kids are calling it these days, the liaisons with ladies. But
Liaisons with ladies.
the but I think that is like a hook to the movie that they get into very quickly, and I think
The
one
premise
one
of the
thing I would
movie,
say, just starting with it, is I was impressed. I thought the pace of the movie, and it did not, and I like this about Billy Wilder in general, but it was a very entertaining film, I thought.
yeah, when you consider the premise itself is entertaining, you're like, oh, he's renting out his apartment to people to have these secret escapes with their mistresses. And you're like, I don't think I've seen that anywhere else. And it's kind of like an original idea. So the whole premise, you're like, I don't know where this is going to go. Like this could go a lot of different directions. And I think the direction it did go, one of the things about it is it's very unexpected. Like you don't see what's coming, like you don't see it coming. Like he's very good at kind of misdirecting you, setting things up without you knowing what's being set up. And so this premise, like the very beginning, you get the voiceover, which is the only time in the movie they have any voiceovers at the very beginning. And he kind of explains the situation quickly. And within 15 minutes, you get what's going on. You're in it. And it's really fun to just kind of like, okay, I'm on board and just let's see where this goes. So I think right off the bat, it's such a good intro and you get it right away that it's not like a slow burn thing. It's like, I'm on board right away. I just want to see where this goes. I think he does that really well with how he sets that up.
Yeah, I think just in general with film, getting into the unique premise of the story is really valuable, and I think some older films take a while. They really slow burn it. Even if there's gonna be a hook, they really slow burn it. Just they know that the audience doesn't have anywhere else to be, and so they're going to give them their time to build into what's unique about this story. But this one right away, and then I think throughout, the dialogue is pretty quippy. The different scenes move at a pretty good pace, which I thought it just keeps your attention. And what I thought was interesting about this film was it's both pretty light, and I feel like there are some bigger themes at play. And I think that was really interesting to me, that it seems in some ways like a kind of trivial, kind of sex farce of oh, these people having affairs, and what's going to happen if you can imagine what kind of things could happen. What if one person has the key and then someone else comes to the apartment, or
Mhm.
different people walking, what if the wife finds out? I mean, you can imagine different things happening, and I think it plays with some of those ideas. But there are some bigger themes to the film that I think gives it more resonance, and
Right.
and
It's
I
not
guess that
just a comedy. Even though
yeah,
it feels on the surface like it's going to be a comedy, but it really goes into like really dark places. And even these comedic lines, they have this like darkness to them, like it's funny and you're also like, oh, that's also sad. And I feel like you get a lot of that in this movie of this like this is funny, also it's very sad, but it's like got this positive momentum behind it to where you never are worried it's going to go super dark, but it also deals with very dark things.
yeah. I like that Baxter. It's funny because Baxter, very early in the film, he's called a schnook, and he's sort of put upon. He's sort of taken advantage of. He's not the alpha male, but I would say he's still a very active character in the story, and I think that's a mistake that writers sometimes make, or filmmakers sometimes make, is that you want your character to be an underdog. You want them to be in contrast to the stronger willed, more powerful people. But often people make the mistake of then making that character passive and just at the mercy of everybody. But Baxter is always trying to do something. He's actively trying to figure things out. He's pursuing love. He's trying to figure out his career move and trying to take care of his apartment and these things. But he's at the mercy of these more powerful people, but never in just a passive way. I think he's active and then he hits a roadblock, but not just passively being acted upon by everybody.
Right. He tries to take back some authority and then just kind of gives into it. And then he pursues a woman and then he has to kind of give up on that too. It's like every step he takes, he's met with these roadblocks and he just kind of learns to live with like it seems like he's like, okay, I'm just going to accept this, but I'm also just going to go on doing what I've been doing. And just he's like, I'm going to keep going forward with what I want to do despite the fact that I know it's not going to work out. And there's something to that character where it's like he's really easy to root for in that way, where you're like, he has no reason to expect this, no reason to think that things are going to work out for him, and yet he's just going with it anyway, and he's still going to do what he can. And like this, and he's so misunderstood as well by everybody, except as the audience, you see the full story. And so I feel like that's a really likable, sympathetic person to have as your main character in a story like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know we root for Winnie the Pooh, even though he keeps getting his head stuck in the honey, and he
That's a
doesn't
good
really have his
analogy.
act together, but he keeps trying, and we
Keeps
root
trying.
for Winnie the Pooh. But we don't
Right.
really root for Eeyore in the same way. He's like, we feel
Too
bad for
depressed.
Eeyore. We kind of like Eeyore, but Eeyore's not driving the story because
Right.
it's like, oh yeah, bah, bah. And I feel like with Baxter, you're rooting for him, even when things don't work out. He's still trying, and he still has your sympathy, and or your he has you're still invested in him as he tries to make things happen. Um,
Right.
it's what did you think about a big question of this is the film as a great work of cinema. Does it strike you that way? Does it seem like just a lighter hearted movie that is nice but not that important, or did you think it really stood up as a great work of cinema?
I think there's a lot of depth to this. You could look at it surface level, and I think that's fine, but I think it's a great work because there is so much going on below the surface. There's so much depth to every single scene that there's more to this than what meets the eye. And really, when you start thinking about these different scenes, all of these scenes have so many layers to them. Um, one of them that I was just thinking of was there's that scene in the early beginning of the film where Baxter's like eating the TV dinner alone in his apartment. and he's flipping through the channels, and it's like this funny, relatable scene because it's like he's gonna watch a movie, and then this commercial comes on. He's like, okay, I'm gonna find something else. There's nothing else on. He goes back to the movie. They're like, we're gonna start it. Oh wait, here's a commercial, and it's like this. It's like it's funny. We're like we can relate to that, but it's also kind of showing Baxter's life in a way because it's like Baxter's in the same situation where it's like he's waiting for these great things to happen, but then like these corporate people come along. They're like, no, not yet. Like you just have to wait a little bit longer. And he's like, his life is very boring and he's really got nothing going for him. And that's kind of this symbolic of just when he's watching this show, which is funny, kind of symbolic of just his life in general at that point, where it's like he really has no social life. He's got nothing going on. And then you juxtapose that with the irony of his neighbors think that he does. His neighbors are hearing all the noise from the
That's right.
apartment. They're assuming this guy is so popular. They assume he's got more women than he can deal with, and he's partying every single night. And in reality, he's coming home after the party. He misses everybody, and he's the one all alone. And that juxtaposition between where he's at and where everybody thinks he is, and then where he wants to go. There's so many layers to that and how he sets this up to where it really you get to see his character from all these different perspectives. And I think it's really clever how he does that. And it's more than just the surface level thing that the scene could be viewed as if you didn't know.
Yeah, that's a really good insight into Baxter and that juxtaposition. I also think, you know, a couple thoughts that I had about the there's this the morality of the movie is interesting, and I've seen some other Wilder films, and it's interesting to me watching this from 2025 now, but how normal I guess it was for everyone to be having an affair. And
Right.
I mean, it's both, whether you look at it on a morality level of fidelity and not cheating on your spouse, or if you look at it on a level of these powerful men taking advantage of women,
Hmm.
consensually, but with a power imbalance.
Right.
Whichever framework you're looking at it through, the fact that this is so normal for these people is, I mean, I guess I don't know if that is just completely how things were in that time period, but I feel like that's not how things should be in an objective sense. I don't know. It seems like a
There was
weird set of
definitely some truth
morality.
to it, right? There had to have been truth. I bet it's maybe exaggerated a little bit, but me and my wife, we were watching this, we're like, it seems like all these movies in the 50s and 60s really have this theme of infidelity, like being a really main thing in a lot of these movies. Like that. I don't know if that was just at the time, this was just on everybody's minds. People were like, this isn't right, I don't know, but I'm assuming there had to have been some truth to this.
Well, and I think a big part of, I guess I'm not sure if this is how true this is of society, but I think a big part of what's underlying this movie is the idea that families have moved to the suburbs and the men are working in the city, and then there are single women working in the city, and so the men are taking the train in from the suburbs, they're working in the city, they have a city life, then they return to their family in the suburbs, but in the city they are meeting these single women, and Baxter's apartment is the only place they can go to be with them because they actually live in the suburbs with their family. Um,
Right.
and so I don't know if this really was part of life with the move to the suburbs that was a real phenomenon in society. So maybe there was this disconnect between the life that you had in the city and the life that you had in the suburbs. And I'm sure that existed. Maybe not everybody was cheating, but certainly that big disconnect between life at home and then life in the city.
And you
And
could
so
get
that
away
must
with
be
it a
reflecting
lot
some
easier
reality.
back then because you wouldn't have had like phones and GPS locations and all that. It might have been just easier for these people to get away with it
And they
and get
wouldn't be
caught.
running into each other. If your family's in Connecticut and you're dating somebody in Manhattan, they're just not going to run into each other at the grocery store.
And Manhattan may be one of the few places this movie could actually take place, since you have that commuter situation, which is what you would need
Yeah.
for
Well,
that
and
to
I think
work.
that's what makes the apartment such a pivotal part. I mean, I think he's in the 60s, near a block from Central Park, and he's
Oh yeah.
paying $85 a month for the apartment. Man, that you wish you'd held on to that apartment, but
No,
uh,
you calculate that today, you're like, that's very cheap.
that's that. I mean that I almost think today it wouldn't be so much about the suburbs versus city. It would just be the fact that somebody has this amazing apartment in the heart of Manhattan that is drawing everybody in. Um,
Because he would be
but
paying just over $1,000 a month for that apartment, which there isn't an apartment in Manhattan for $1,000 a month. I don't anywhere,
oh, you're saying with
So
just with inflation, what that would
just with
equal?
inflation, what $100 in 1960 is just over $1,000 today.
Oh
So
yeah, and that's not anywhere close to what that would
housing has
cost
gone
now.
up a
So
ridiculous amount. So
the another thing that I noticed about the film though was, and I had so Billy Wilder was he was Jewish from Austria, I believe, and fled to the U.S. At the beginning of the Nazi regime. Uh, I don't know if he was in Austria or Germany, but I think he left in like 33, 34. So at the beginning of that, so getting ahead of it a little bit. But it was interesting to me watching this how many like Jewish references there were. And I think it is a major theme of the film that maybe went over the head of a lot of people. But I think right from the beginning, Baxter is called a schnook, and a big point is him becoming a mensch. And so you
right,
have these sort of ideas that are underlying this. You have the idea that uh, there's a big theme of Christmas happening, and Baxter never wishes somebody a Merry Christmas. And like there are a
that's
couple
true.
times where he pointedly like uh, somebody says, "Have a hope you have a wonderful Christmas," and he doesn't respond. Or we hear him
Right,
on the phone say, "Same to you," but we never hear him wish anyone a Merry Christmas. And
I realize that. Yeah,
um, and there's one scene where the executives are standing around and they're talking about their plans, and they refer to their car at their they refer to a Volkswagen, but they call
hmm
it a Volkswagen in the German pronunciation, which is both telling that it's the German pronunciation, plus that car brand specifically has a lot of history. The word folk is a very there's a lot of connotations to that word in sort of German, especially sort of German World War II era. And so
right,
I think this is not unintentional. But I think, and then Baxter's neighbors are very clearly Jewish and
right,
like speak with accents. And I think we have Baxter as this figure who's sort of in between the the Christian or non-Jewish sort of establishment, and then his neighbors who are very very clearly Jewish, and he's sort of trying to navigate through this world, not really fitting in. I mean, it's never said that he's Jewish. Maybe he's not Jewish, but I think this idea that he doesn't really fit in this world, and that might be an experience that other people connect with.
that's definitely a theme that he just doesn't fit in anywhere. He's kind of just on his own. This whole idea. I didn't realize that with the Jewish thing that they are showing that like he doesn't fit in with his neighbors. His neighbors don't like him there. He doesn't fit in at work either. They're just using him. He's really got nowhere to go physically and like emotionally. There's just nowhere for him to go. He's kind of just all on his own. That's a great, just another layer to this story that I hadn't even noticed. That it just is much deeper than you think it is.
And that is one of my favorite things in film. I mean, there are some films that really scream of their importance, and sometimes that undermines them being good. Sometimes they are great, and it's just very obvious that this is a great. I mean, I think Battle of Algiers is a film that it's not an easy watch, but it's very rewarding. But you sort of feel like you're watching a good it feels like an
Yeah.
important film while you're watching it. And I think The Apartment is a great example of a film that you
Just
could
kind of
not
sneaks up on
notice
you.
that it's a great film while you're watching it. It could just feel fun, but I think there's a lot more going under the surface.
Oh yeah, it's very understated in the way that it's presented to you. It's almost like everything is just kind of a it kind of just sneaks up slowly on you, and you don't even realize what's happening until it's already happened, which I think is so maybe one of the reasons Billy Wilder is such a good writer is just that he can get all of this in there without you even noticing. It's almost like he's doing it in a way to where it's not obvious and you don't see it coming. And I think that takes a lot of skill, to be able to write that well, to tell a story this deep in a way that feels so accessible.
I think it's a really interesting. I think that is one of the great skills because in many ways, if you're not connecting with an audience, then you're not really achieving. I mean, then there's no one to take in the important messages that you're trying to get across. So you need to be able to connect with an audience first and foremost, but then hopefully have something actually important to say underneath that. And I think he does such a good job of that.
Yeah. There's a lot of this movie that's kind of revolves around misunderstandings. And I was thinking about this how there's that trope where characters where it's like if they just talk to each other, then everything would be fine. They could just talk this out. And there's a lot of movies that do that kind of force this misunderstanding, and then that's kind of the plot moving forward. But with this movie, he has all of these misunderstandings. They're everywhere, and it's funny, and there's a lot of comedy behind it, and there's a lot of tragedy behind it. But like the misunderstandings, if they were to just talk to each other, like it wouldn't actually solve anything. So like I was thinking about that scene in where they have the Christmas party, and then Fran gets pulled in, and she talks to one of Sheldrake's assistants, and she finds out, oh, she's not the first woman he's done this with. He's done this with so many others. So then she's got this crushing news. She's very kind of sad and depressed, and then Baxter like brings her into his office. He's all happy and excited, and then she hands him just her broken mirror, which means nothing to her, but he sees that and he's like, oh, I found this from my couch earlier. Sheldrake is the one taking Fran to my apartment. So then he finds this out, and then you have Sheldrake who knows who he uses the apartment with, but he doesn't know what Fran knows. He doesn't know what Baxter knows. And so there's these whole situations where the whole story kind of revolves around different people having information and not knowing what the other person knows, but it's used in a way to where it's natural and it's kind of organically moves the story forward. Where even if they were to say, this is what I know, it doesn't solve the problem because the problem is their emotional situation. It's the power dynamics. It's what are they doing to fulfill their lives. And so just talking isn't going to solve anything. And so you don't need that. And as an audience, you're not looking for them. You're not like, oh, I wish they would just talk. I wish they could just understand each other. You never really feel that in this movie because it's done in a way to where the misunderstandings are natural and adds depth to the relationships and to the emotional states of people without being a crutch that the whole story is sitting on without you needing the misunderstandings for things to move forward. It's going forward either way. And I think that's just such an interesting, like a very skillful way of doing this to where the audience isn't upset about the misunderstandings because he has it all over the place. And it never feels like, oh, I just want them to figure this out. And it just slowly happens over time in a very natural way. I was thinking about how good it is, how well done the movie is to have that in it and still be such an easy watch and so fun and engaging the whole time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. I think it would really undermine it if anytime you have that situation of this is so easily resolvable and yet the characters are stupid and not resolving it. But that's not the
Right.
situation here. But it really is entertaining, and I think that kind of, I mean, Shakespeare does a lot of that too, of sort of ironic, he knows this and she knows that, but they don't know that the other one knows, and those kinds of things. I think that can work really well, uh, as long as the characters don't just seem stupid for not knowing, and I think that works really
Right.
well here.
It's a very fun situation to be in. and fun to watch as an audience, as long as it's set up to where you can't just talk and the whole thing's done. You need a lot more to it. And this whole movie is basically that. Like, that's kind of the crux of everything. But it's just such a fun, engaging way to present the story.
And I think that is, if you're approaching, not just as a film watcher or critic or whatever, but if you're trying to write films or make films, I think that's an important lesson too, in taking a step back to examine the logic of your story and say, are these characters doing this in a way that normal people would do it, or are they doing something ridiculous because I needed them to for the story? Does this fit with how anybody would actually behave in this situation? Would somebody just resolve it by doing X, Y, or Z? And I think often, like, our first instinct is, well, they just don't know about it, so it's fine, and so then that's why they keep going, or whatever. But it's logically, that's not how people would do it, and that's your characters then seem stupid, and you pull the audience out of it. And so I think that's something to really pay attention to when you're writing, that Billy Wilder does really well here.
If everybody would just write as well as Billy Wilder, I think the world would be a better place.
Just do it this well. Just come
Just
on, guys. It's not that hard. So let's move on to, the Hollywood studio comes calling and says, we want to remake The Apartment. We want you to do it, but here is the condition. We want it to be a family film. What do you do? How do you approach The Apartment as a family
I,
film?
I'm still stuck on your idea of how he's like Winnie the Pooh like. I think that's how you do it. Winnie the Pooh's got his apartment, and they'd have to be coming for some other reason than having an affair. But you could do this, Winnie the Pooh. And he's like, oh, we need to use your apartment for this party. And Winnie the Pooh just kind of always gets left out. I think it's right there. I did
You could
not,
totally do
think of
that.
it beforehand. What do you
That's
think?
good. I was thinking, and this is sort of cheating because I don't think this would be appropriate for a family film, but I was thinking there's also a like a teenage version of this that would make sense. So not really like a family film for children, but I mean, I just don't think you could make this movie in the same way now, because I think I think the idea that everybody's on board with all these affairs happening is, I don't think
Right.
people would. I think you would lose the audience with that, and so I don't think that would make sense to people anymore. I do think, and I haven't been in high school for a while, but I do think the idea of like teenagers wanting, a space that they can, get together with their special friend, like, I think that is probably still a thing that happens, because whose parents are home, whose parents aren't home, who's got a lake house or whatever. Like, I think that kind of situation still happens, and we don't fault the teenagers for that like we would people cheating on their
Right.
spouse. And so I
So
think that you could do something like the high school version of The Apartment.
and that's what it would have to be these days. It would be very much a high school thing. I think, but like the movie itself is very high school, like moral values and like just trying to sneakily get away from stuff. And it's almost like like in the apartment, that all the men are like, my wife is like my parent in a way. They're like, oh, they're going to get mad if they catch me doing this. So that's a good point. Like it does come across more of a teenager situation of what it would be in the modern days.
Yeah. So not appropriate for 5-year-olds, but that would be the Winnie the Pooh version.
Is the
But
Winnie the Pooh version? Yeah,
I think you could do this with teenagers. Um,
it
okay,
would
but
work.
now what about Hollywood coming and saying we want to do this for no budget? What does the no budget version of this look like?
There's hardly any budget to this. I would have to think like this was had to be done pretty cheaply.
I mean, there
There's not
wouldn't
very
need
many.
to be.
Yeah, you really don't
You
need
could
it.
do it pretty much as is, without the same cast, but you could do it basically as is for very low budget.
You'd probably just have to, not have such famous actors in it. Let's see. The apartment was 3 million to make in 1960. What does that put us at? 32 million. That's not the
So I mean,
cheapest budget. but it's
I feel
low.
like that's when you make a movie like this and it's a big studio making it and you have big actors and it's
Hmm.
actually a cheap movie, but you're doing everything like union, you're doing everything, paying above board, like with the big payers. I think I think $30 million is, I mean, that's pretty cheap for a studio. I don't know that um it's
I mean, you got
I mean, I think
three
that's
big
sort of what it
name
would cost
actors.
now.
Yeah, if you're gonna have big actors in it and a
Yeah.
well-known director, and this movie, did it win Best Picture or anything? What did this won five
It was
Oscars? So I feel like if you spend $30 million on a movie that wins five Oscars, that's well worth the return on
Yeah.
a
I mean,
you're
you
doing
could definitely spend more. But I think if you did this on no budget, I think you could do it largely the same. I do think, just in the spirit of no budget and what makes something no budget, I do think if you had more happening just in the apartment, I mean, if it was really the apartment and the office and you have sort of two
yeah,
locations, I think you could condense the locations. I mean, I
even
also was
cheaper.
thinking if you had, thinking outside the box a little bit, but if the hook is, it depends a little bit on what is your point in making this movie, and is the point, I mean, exploring themes of, loneliness in society is your point. Just you've got a great premise and you want to see where that goes. Is your point you want to see this Baxter character and put upon by the world, but still trying to make it? Is your point the relationship that he has, even though it's this sort of impossible relationship? I mean, there are different. What is your main point in doing this? Which I mean, the film I think is great because it can be all of those things. But sometimes I think you have to focus in on
If
what
you're gonna lower
exactly
the
is the
budget,
top priority that you're trying
that's
to
higher
tell.
focus. Yeah, if you would really need to focus in on one of those things mainly, because you do have. I would think the big scenes you'd have to cut would be like that office scene where there's like 100 people in that office. That's a lot of extras. There are some scenes on the street of New York with a lot of people in it, but you could get that down. Today, you'd have an office where it would be he'd just be in a cubicle anyway, and
Yeah,
even though it could be a huge company, you wouldn't have to see so many people all at once.
right, right. I also think it would be interesting if this premise could also lend itself to different setups. Like, I mean, I just think if there was, if you lent your key out to a bunch of different people to use your apartment, and then and then there's a dead body in the apartment, and
Right.
all sorts of different people were using your apartment, but it's yours, and now you need to figure out what happened. And I mean, that would be the same like beginning premise, very different movie, but that would be an interesting place you could go with this.
You could definitely make it a horror in no time.
Oh yeah, could be crime, thriller, horror. You could do a lot of things with this.
That's interesting. With this premise, it could go really any direction you wanted to. It's just a really solid premise of just like so much could happen when you do something like this.
It also could be like, what if Baxter is not the main character? What if you were telling this story as one of the people showing up to this apartment, one of the women who's showing up for a date to this apartment, and then and then the owner of the apartment comes back, and that would be a crazy scenario to be in. There are all sorts of things you could do with this.
If you just did the
Off,
movie from Fran's perspective, where you'd only see her perspective the whole time, and then you find out when she wakes up and it's his apartment, she's like, Who? Why are you here?" That would be a whole another way to do the story in a just from a woman's perspective. I think it'd be a little scarier too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a sort of like the opening of the movie Barbarian, just this confusion about, are you in the right place? Is there somebody like
Yeah, waking
this?
up.
I mean, obviously, a home invasion is scary, but the tension of, is this a home invasion? Is this a threatening person, or is this an innocent misunderstanding? I think that tension could be really interesting. A friend of mine had he had an apartment with a bunch of roommates, and then he got a serious relationship and basically started living with his girlfriend, and then came back to his apartment one night to get some stuff and found someone else in his bed and discovered that like his other roommates had noticed that he wasn't there anymore, so they had just rented out his bed to somebody else.
Just all this stuff. Yeah, we got a free space. That's a
Yep.
funny premise too.
Never
And
even
something that
talked
would
about it
happen.
with him. Just like they noticed he
Yeah,
hadn't been there in a while.
yeah, yeah. You can move in.
But
My friend needs a place to stay. Yeah,
all right, so the one last one is the apartment as a 10-part Netflix series. What would that look like?
I do think it's better as a movie. This story, it's very contained. Um, if you were to do this as a Netflix series, I think you'd need more than just the one character. You could do something around like each episode is a different person comes to use the apartment, and you kind of get these different backstories, and then do like 4 or 5 of those, and then they kind of all converge in some way at the end, the last couple episodes. I think you could do something fun around that. But if it was just the main story, like we're keeping the story the same, I don't know that there's a lot more there to drag this out in another 10 hours. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I agree. I agree. And I was also thinking, I mean, I think there's a natural setup of telling the stories of the people coming there. There's a there's an improv form called La Ronde, which is like you tell like you have one scene with two characters, and then one of those characters goes into a new scene with a new character, and so there's like a
Mm.
daisy chain of different stories happening. Um, and so you could do something like, I mean, something like that. You could do something like, but just like different stories that are have this as a jumping off point. There was a show on HBO, I think, called Room 104 that was like, and there's a British show called Inside Number Nine where Inside Number Nine is sort of a little bit. They use like the idea is like you're in room number nine or train car number nine, but they use that as a little bit of a broader kind of idea. But the idea being we're going to tell lots of different stories with this one little through line of it's going to be in this space.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that'd be a strong pitch because it's such a good setup. You could just do a ton of different stories, and I think that'd be fun to do that. And just be like, oh, it's all these all happen in the same apartment, and this is the backstory, but it's all kind of a different story every episode with just that one thing, that one through line. That's how
I guess
I
my
think.
worry with that though would be how many different stories would there be to tell? Like if you're telling fully contained stories, I mean you could
It'd
tell
be
the
nice
story of
if they were interconnected somehow. That'd be better. If even if it was just in some slight way.
yeah. I mean, I guess I'm thinking like in some ways this invites the idea of we'll tell 10 different short stories, each one of them involving this apartment. But
Mhm.
when I think about how I would write that, I'm like, those are you have this the idea of people having an affair coming to this apartment. How different are those stories going to be? I mean, a couple of them, but I feel like
Yeah.
there's a limit on how unique and interesting those stories could be if each one of them is just self-contained. But if you did do, we're going to have instead of Baxter, uh, uh,
Fran.
Fran, and Sheldrake, and then we're going to instead have 8 characters who are like not one central character, but we're going to have 8 different people with their intermingling stories. Then maybe you have an ongoing,
And you cut to
overlapping stories
scenes,
enough to carry the series.
and they cut to scenes at work where they're all in the work scene, but then you go to the apartment, it's just one couple for this episode or something. And you could have some overlap there. I think you'd need that probably for this to be interesting at all. And then somehow it would need to converge at the end where they all the stories kind of intermingle and something happens. Dead body. I mean, it almost heads that way already, as is. People get found out.
I also think there's something interesting. I mean, the fact that the wives are not real characters in the film is,
Yeah.
a little bit, I think, a product of its time. It's
Hmm.
also just an interesting creative choice to say that they are not part of the story. They are just, an element in the background. And so I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but those are
You
real
can have
people. And so it would be interesting to say, like, I mean, and you're part of the creative choice of the apartment is saying we're only going to follow this side of the relationship. There's a whole other relationship that these men are in that we're not actually tracking. And I think that's an interesting creative choice. But it is true that, like, what are the wives doing, and what does that life look like, and is that interesting to also incorporate into a bigger story?
Yeah, it would open up the story a lot if you added the wives' side to this. You'd have a lot more to work with. I'm always thinking like Mad Men, like, like this would just, like, if this was in the show Mad Men, this would be like just a plot point that happens. They go to an apartment every now and then. But you could have something like that where it's that style of the wives at home, the men at work, the infidelity in between, and then the mishaps with the apartment. You could really make something around that.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, maybe this is Mad Men. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe that's just what they're doing with Mad Men is the TV version of this.
a TV version of this. That could be it.
Well, would any of those be an improvement on the film itself?
I'm saying no. I think this is the best way to tell this story is this film. 5 Oscar wins too. I mean, that says a lot.
That says a lot. That says a lot. I don't know what else they were up against that year, but I would say I agree. I think the basic premise could be explored in different ways, but I think the depth of the characters and the themes that are here really work well in this film version. And I think the Winnie the Pooh version would lose something.
See, that's the thing. Any other version of this, you're not getting the same story, and it's not going to be like as good as this story is. It's going to be a different story, like a very different story. And yeah, so I don't think there's any way you can make this specific story better than what it is in this format.
I agree. I agree. Would you recommend this to people?
Yeah, I think I would. I guess it's not technically family friendly, but if I was a kid watching this, I don't know that I would really get all of the hinting, the behind the scenes stuff. I think it's pretty fun. It might go over your head though, but yeah, I'd recommend it to a lot of people.
I mean, I think the Sheldrake clearly has, he clearly has a wife, and that's a big part of the story. For a lot of the people, like you might not even realize that they are married and they're having an affair. You might just think
Yeah,
they're meeting up on a date with these women, and so, like, that wouldn't necessarily mean the same thing. But I think this is fun but deep, and I think that's well worth the watch.
it's you can watch it, get surface level fun out of it, and you can watch it again and get more out of it, and again and get more out of it. I think it's a very repeatable movie that not all movies are, but if you watch this, just like we watch this every year as a family or with my friends, I'm like, yeah, that I could see that. Like, this is one of those types of movies where you could put it on with a group of people and have a good time, no matter how many times you've seen it or if you ever have seen it.
I agree in theory. It would be a little weird to watch this annually with your family. We're gonna watch. We're gonna. It's Easter. We're watching The
With your,
Apartment again.
with your kids, maybe.
I mean, It's a
Maybe,
Wonderful
yeah. If
Life
you have,
is also a bit of a weird movie, but I mean, it has some. I feel like It's a Wonderful Life is a weirder movie than we give it credit for, considering how much we watch
yeah.
it. But
And if you think about like other movies you watch as a family, like there's no showing of anything sexual in this. It's all talk. And so like visually, if you're just walking in and out of the room, there's nothing visually that would be upsetting for anybody to see, really. And it's just the themes behind it that are a little more adult. That would be the only thing. But like, if you watch war movies or if you're watching like James Bond or something, there's going to be way more sexual scenes in a movie like that than this. So yeah, let's watch this every year for Easter. I think that's the best.
bring
That's
the
that's
kids in. We're
Jewish
going to watch The
holiday, right?
Apartment. Thanks for joining us for this episode of How to Make Films and Influence People, our discussion of The Apartment. Check us out at howtomakefilmspodcast.com, and we'll see you next time.